Hello, everyone. Welcome to JF Smith Group and Comprehensive Prospect Rating. How to RFM, which is Recency Frequency Monetary, the JFSG way. This is Mark Martin, and I'm here with Steve Jankovich. We're just glad that all of you had time to join us this morning, and we share this information with you. And let me just say, first of all, that this idea of a comprehensive prospect rating. We all know that we have data, we have information, and we're all looking at how do we take that data and information and best use it in order to achieve our goals, which is maximizing the giving to our organizations. So, and I want to say as we do this too, that all the things that Jerry Smith, the philosophy of the JF Smith Group, the basic principles and all those things apply to this. This isn't anything new, but it's a different way of applying everything using all those basic principles that have been constants for this company for many years. Let me just say that when you look at this overall, we're looking at seeing the right people and having the right strategy and looking at the right amount and as we pursue our efforts towards our organization. So let's talk a little bit about how we do that. And we're looking at right now, Steve and I will talk to you over the next 45 minutes or so and save some time. And if we can at the end, open it up for a question. Steve, do you have anything to add to that?
No, sounds good, Mark.
Very good. Well, again, welcome everybody, and let's have some fun doing this and learning something today. As I mentioned, we're looking at our philosophy applies to this, but analyzing variables in relationship to capacity. We have a number of, when I say variables, a number of factors that we always looked at, but sometimes we looked at it kind of in different silos, and we never really added them up in a way that could give us a picture that really could help us, as I said, identify the right people that we need to see and what the right strategy should be. So some of the data points that we're talking about right now, these variables, are the monetary giving. The monetary giving, that's cumulative giving, okay? And we're going to give that an alphabetical rating. We're also, and we've done this for years, looking at the recency of giving over the last 5 years as well as the date of their last gift. And these two recency numbers are going to be factored into this overall picture we're doing. And then also the frequency, and that's the total number of gifts. And this tells us a lot, and it includes really information about their how inclined they are to give, because they give, it's not so much the amount, but how frequently they give, as well as this might be an indicator, as you see in the number 5 there, 13 gifts or more is an indicator of maybe this person being a higher potential for a estate gift. But I want to say that 1 through 5, all these data points are really in relationship to capacity. That is kind of the holy grail here. What are we looking at in relationship to capacity? And all this that I've said will make a lot more sense to you as we dive into it now and look at what this comprehensive prospect rating number looks like. Now, when I mentioned the overall, we're looking at someone's monetary giving. We've given that an alphabetical score. You see in the box to your left, A, B, C, D, in relationship to their dollar amounts giving. And that's their lifetime giving to the organization. So overall, an A giver has given over a lifetime 50,000 or more. And you see B, 25 to 49, and C. So after a while, you get familiar with and you could, for your organization, these dollar amounts could be adjusted in relationship to what your organization would best fits you as far as what an A donor would be. But you can see that once you get familiar with those numbers in your mind, how a little bit later when we look at these, this is going to help you. When you look at the capacity, again, I call this the holy grail, but when you're looking at what is the capacity of the individual, that's based on wealth screening information that you must have to do. And there's a number of organizations can help you do that. But the estimated capacity is in relationship to wealth screening. And again, an A donor is 500 or 1,000 or more, and you see the B 100 to 499 and so forth. And so those numbers you're going to see, we're going to use those a little bit more later as Steve and I talk to you about this.
Well, one of the reasons we talk about the creating good distribution on this is depending on your organization and the number of prospects you have, how long you've been raising funds, and if you're a university or a Christian school, these scales are going to greatly differ. So for a university, creating $50,000 and more as your top scale, that might have half your database in it. Whereas for a Christian school, if they set their top category at $500,000, they may only have 3 or 4 donors in there, and then the rest of them reside in D, E, and F. So you just want to create something that makes sense for you, that creates a good distribution of your prospects. Now, when we're talking about the data, once you apply these scores to your database, your monetary score, as we said, was alphabetical, and it's based on what their total giving is to your organization. You can see all these A's here, they've given 50,000 or more. The B's are 25 to 50,000. Then you calculate your recency score based on today's date minus their last gift date. And that's how you create that score. So anything that lower is better, obviously. And we typically don't pay much attention to things that have a recency score of greater than 6. It doesn't mean that they're no longer interested. You may still have some A donors or B donors who've given a lot, but their last gift was 7, 10, 15 years ago. You may want to find out if there was an issue there with them, put them in a different silo, and see if you can re-engage them. But we're really concentrating more on your current active donors, the people who have you in their thoughts every time they open their checkbook. The estimated capacity score, again, that's just sorted highest to lowest by your estimated capacity, and then you can easily mark who's an A and a B and a C, and then your gift score, just leave it like that. And what you want to do once you get everything scored is just add them up, the M, the R, the number of gifts, the estimated capacity, and what we like to do is anything that is 13 gifts or more, we just put a little asterisk over there to kind of highlight it. Once you get used to this, it's real easy to read these combined scores, and it tells you a lot more information than your typical RFM analysis might do, where it might just give you a single number score based on a 100-point scale. You don't really know much about it. But when you're looking at it like this, with our comprehensive prospect rating score, it's easy to tell a lot more information about your donor prospects just from this single column right here. So in looking at the prospect on row 1, just looking at that score, I can tell this person's given over $50,000 cumulatively. Their last gift was within the last calendar year. They've made 54 gifts lifetime, and they have a B capacity, meaning they're between 100,000 and 500,000 in capacity. And oh yeah, they're a prime prospect for a estate gift. The reason we know that they're a prime prospect for an estate gift is we do a lot of work with donor search, and I shared this formula with them. And Bill Tedesco, the president and CEO of Donor Search, said, one of the things you might want to highlight here is over the years we've started to understand that people who have made 13 or more gifts to a single organization, they tend to be prime candidates for an estate gift. So we took that piece of information from Bill and just kind of incorporated it in here by marking these with an asterisk. So it's a really pretty unique way of looking at all this information and finding out a lot more about it, learning more about your prospect just from a quick snapshot. To go back to this scale over here, or the previous slide, how we sort the information to rank and prioritize them is the first thing we do is we sort their number of gifts, highest to lowest, to bring all the high givers up to the top. And then we look at the recency score. We sort that one lowest to highest, so all of our ones are at the top. And then we want to look at this 5-year giving here, because we want the 5-year giving to offset maybe the last gift date. Because if somebody has more giving over the last 5 years, that should probably count more than if somebody's made a $50 gift in the last year. And finally, we sort them A to Z by the monetary score. So all your A's will be at the top. And then within those A's, they'll all be sorted highest to lowest by 5-year giving, and then by their recency score, and then by their gift count. Now, one of the ways that you can use this data to give you some actionable information moving forward is, let's say you do that original sort. It just provides you that list A to Z. But you've got some prospects that aren't all going to be A, Bs, or AAs in your list. Let's take a look at a couple of these scenarios. In the first scenario, you may have a person here who's got a monetary score of E, meaning they've given only between $2,500 and $5,000. So their cumulative giving score, 4,600, ranks them as an E. However, their last gift was within the last year. They've made 8 gifts. But if you look at their estimated capacity, there's not a whole lot of upside here. They've only got an estimated capacity, according to Donor Search, of about $14,000 over a 5-year period. So do we want to keep these kinds of prospects in the portfolio? Now, the way we had originally sorted it, these guys would have been ranked a little bit higher than some of our prospects in scenario 2, because if you look at their giving over the last 5 years, these people have given a little bit more. They've given $4,500 down to $2,800 versus the highest of $420 and down over here. Now, all other things being pretty much equal, they're all E's or F's. They've all given in the last year. Their number of gifts, there's a little bit more over here on that top side. However, you can't really squeeze blood out of a turnip, and you're not really going to have an easy time converting somebody who doesn't have the capacity into a major gift prospect. These people are probably already giving at their maximum level. They just love your organization, and they're doing everything that they can. On the flip side, if you take some of these same kinds of prospects, but people who have great upside or a lot of potential for major gifts, and you steward those people, you really have the potential to make a difference and an impact. So where you have this person who is an E capacity giver, they've only given 3,500, they have the capacity of almost $1 million, or over $750,000, 816,000, with the smallest one being 501,000. Now these are actual numbers out of an actual file that we worked for one of our university clients. And to show you how this impacted the portfolio, let's take a look at this next slide here. When I used the original sort method on the first portfolio, the top 150 prospects had an estimated capacity of 4.5 million, cumulative giving of 1,260,000. But once I got out of those AAs, ABs, Bs, BCs in terms of overall cumulative giving versus their inclination or capacity to give, I started coming into those E capacity donors that were E givers. Well, once I replaced some of those E givers with E givers who had an A capacity, the portfolio of my top 150 shot up to 11,400,000, and I only lost $117,000 in overall giving, but I gained in capacity over $6.8 million. So there's a lot more upside in that new top 150 just by looking at their inclination versus their capacity. And another development officer in that same organization, their original top 150 sort, they had 9.8 million in capacity. Those prospects had given just under $6.7 million. And when I reconfigured their top 150, removing some of those bottom tier prospects that didn't have great upside, the estimated capacity shot up to just under 30 million, and the cumulative giving only dropped by 970,000. So while that portfolio lost 970,000 in cumulative giving, it gained an immense amount of potential, almost $20 million in upside. So just in looking at your portfolios in a different way in relation to their capacity versus their inclination, you can do a lot of great things with the people that you're currently involved with.
Steve,
Mark, I know you wanted to talk a little bit more about matching their inclination with their capability.
Yeah, Steve,
so I'm going to turn it back over to you, Mark.
Yeah, let's go back to the previous slide and let's talk some specifics. As we actually went out and, I talked earlier about the right strategy and the right amount. You're looking at the top box up there, and Steve mentioned the difference between the different donors there. But you see that in the top box, the E1.55E, that person who had given 55 gifts, they don't have a lot of capacity, but yet if I was going to go see them, they're one of our faithful donors. They're definitely a high priority for possibly an estate gift. And that could be a nice gift. Yes, their giving is $2,800, but let's just say they're a 5 of $19,000, and and I'm calling a 5 being their inclination rating on a scale of 1 to 5. And Steve, in a second, you can kind of pull that up. But our philosophy, as I said, stays the same. We think if you're a 5, you're invested. This person looks invested with us, and a 4 is involved, 3 is interested, and a 2 is information, and a 1 is identified. So on that scale, we take a percentage of that capacity over the period of years that we're talking about the gift, and the max being a 5 would be 50%. So with that E-level donor right there that we're talking about, if being a 5 at 20,000, that'd be a maximum gift of about 10,000 over, let's say, over a 5-year period. So that would be my next move management, even for that person. And as Steve said, and possibly an estate gift. But when you're looking at the upside, you see that person's largest gift's been 175. That's a nice step forward, even with that person. So there is opportunities to study the strategies with your lower capacity people. But again, when you look at, as Steve said, the upside, let's look at some of those folks in the second scenario that he's talking about. And we actually went out and looked at donors. We actually visited with a donor that was an F donor with a capacity last week with the institution Steve's talking about. And I want to give you an operative word to think about today. Don't assume anything. You might assume as a development officer sitting in your office that when you see someone that hasn't made a lot of gifts and they've given not a large amount over time, that they don't have any inclination. One of the key things that I'm looking for when I'm going on the cultivation meetings is the donor's inclination. We visited with the donor, like you see here, an E19A. Okay, only $420, given in 5 years. So you're looking at a low. So you might be thinking, well, that person is not very, they're pretty low. But look at the capacity. Okay, so even if they're a 1, 10% of 800,000 is 80,000. If they're a 2, again, that's 160,000. So I'm looking at, again, as Steve said, the upside is high. So I'm thinking if I go see this person and determine what that inclination is, I'm going, well, wait a minute, let's just look at, when I'm looking at that number now, 1, 2, 3, the inclination number. They gave this year, they've given 9 gifts. So is that person more than identified? Yes, they're giving. Okay, 2, they have information. Okay, well, does this person have information? Obviously, they're getting information, so they're at least a 2 because they're making gifts. And 3, are they showing interest? For this person's capacity of 800,000, I would say this person is showing interest. 9 gifts given this year, even though they're not high dollar amounts. So I'm looking at a number of 3, which is 30% of that 800,000. And when I go on that call, I'm looking at a gift in that 150 to 250 range, and I'm going to go in. Do I see the 4 rights there? Do I see that being a right amount? And I'm also looking at what is that donor's actual inclination. I went on that call this week with an individual that we're looking at right there. And that call, I found that that person's inclination, not only did he take the meeting, which told me something, but that person's inclination was what we thought. This person wants to consider giving a leadership gift back to their institution. They were very glad that the organization had come and visited them personally and given them this time and attention that they were receiving. So let me just say this: when we left, we talked to this individual about could we come back and bring a proposal. We actually moved that quickly with them, and the answer is yes. And that leads me to the next piece of this, which is a practical application. I said the right strategy, the right amount. So we're looking at this going, I don't want to we're not going to try to hit a home run right here and move them up to a 5 and get them involved, get them on a board, or get them involved in some capacity right now. Let's just get that, what we would call a single, which would be, maybe it's that inclination rating of a 2, which would be, again, 100, in this case would be a significant low 6-figure gift. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's even a little more conservative, but get that single. And you as a donor, you as the development officer, the art and science, you've got to look at those numbers and come up with that amount. But when we left the meeting, we knew that the numbers that we were thinking about were pretty close. We knew we were talking about the right numbers. So I like to say those basic principles: when you go, have a number in mind, look at that capacity, look at that relationship. And this CPR number gives you so much information to do that. I mean, look at the second one down, F137A. Wow. I mean, that's 37 gifts. Yes, they've been low amounts, so he's an F giver. So Steve and I are calling that's an underachiever as far as the monetary giving, but great capacity, but yet they've shown loyalty and they've shown a commitment over time. So you've got to go explore those people. And in some ways that you've looked at your database, you may have been missing some of those people like that have high capacity, but have shown some loyalty and commitment to your institution.
Here's another scenario that I actually ran into. We were conducting a feasibility study for a university, and I interviewed this person, and they had no real history of giving. A couple of small gifts, a couple $10,000 gifts, and in the feasibility study, this person gave me a range of $10,000 to $1 million. When I asked them to elaborate, because that's a pretty extremely wide range, they said, "Look, I have the capability of doing $1 million." And I've been trying to get them involved with me, but nobody will come out here and give me a touch. Nobody will cultivate me. I've been sending these test gifts over there to see if they will steward it, and they just haven't returned my call or reciprocated the efforts. So here you have a prospect who's been a low-level giver and is about to just walk away with his money and give it to somebody else, but he's giving them one last chance. He's got the capability of doing 7-figure gifts. So you've got some of these prospects out there. They just haven't been engaged. So we need to take the time to identify these people, go out there, make the touches, cultivate them, and get them involved, and you can grow those gifts. This is a great way to identify some of those prospects. Is everybody on this list going to be a diamond in the rough? No, but even if you find 1 or 2, that's great for your organization. Mark, you want to show them that
Yes.
inclination pyramid, or talk about that for 1 second so they have an understanding of what you were talking about?
Right. Let's go ahead and, this is, the 5 eyes, the inclination rating pyramid, the 5 eyes, and as I mentioned, the investment is of 50%. You see, they're involved, regular donor, participates in functions, school, member of some organization you might have, alumni. Involved is a 40%, and then the 3, interest, 2, information, 1, identified. When you look at those scales over there that the comprehensive prospect rating, you can kind of see a picture to help you determine what window they might fall in here. And again, being conservative and looking at it in a way to say, let's not try to hit a home run. A lot of times I see that people look at capacity, and because they've got a high capacity, they say, oh, they're a high capacity, I'm going to make them a 5. No, they're not a 5. They haven't invested in you yet. Maybe they've only got information about you, but your goal is to take that prospect and raise his inclination up from a 1 to a 2 or a 3, and move them up the scale. And that's what that relationship building does through cultivation. If you go back, Steve, now to the slide we had there with the right there. If you go back and say, okay, I'm going to take this the individual down that's I was talking about, the E19A, the first one in the second box. If my first gift with him is even 50,000 or $100,000 gift, that's let's say at a 1 level, and he's been given 9 times, and he's going to look at you and think, they know my capacity, and they're not overstepping with me, and this is a single, but yet they recognize, and I'll tell you, a sophisticated donor will understand that. If I went in and asked him for $1,000 gift, he'd probably look at me and say, they don't understand what they're doing, because that's what I've experienced with donors. But now this person, let's just say we go in there at a 1 or a 2 level and get a $100,000 range gift. If I raise him up to a 5, Steve said, cultivate him, involve him, get him involved. If I get him up to a 5, that's a $400,000 gift. So if I looked at this person, I'd say my initial gift, remember, their first gift is their smallest. His initial gift is going to be in the 50 to 100,000 range, but I have my goal over stewardship and cultivation of this guy in my portfolio over the next 3 to 5 years may be a mid 6-figure gift, a $300,000 to $400,000 gift. So that's exciting to see. And I think when you're looking at managing your portfolios, that's the kind of strategies, long-term strategy, you need to be developing as you're dealing with relationships and dealing with stewardship. At the same time, don't overlook the asterisk that's next to those by those people that have given you 13 or more gifts. Remember that magic number 13. And you see that, the individual, the second in that same lower box, the second individual, 37 gifts, as well as the next one down, 22 gifts. Those are prime candidates for an estate gift. And so when you're doing your strategy, you want it to be a comprehensive strategy, so that when you're visiting and building that relationship, you can visit with them about after your church, your family, or have you ever thought about our institution as a percentage of your estate gift? And those are the kind of candidates that are going to probably respond, yeah, I thought about that, or no, I would think about that. And so those are something you've got to do, because that's a key element of the long-term success of your organization, is to be able to secure those estate gifts. As we said early on in this, that you want to look at the right people, the right strategy, the right amount, and always have an amount in mind. And we always talk about, and of course, the right time. And there's no better time than the current. But you can see that with your donors, especially as you study data. Data can be overwhelming at times, and Steve is a master at being able to look at data and get it out of silos and get it to where you can see it and understand it and how to better use it. And it was sure hope today that some of this conversation will be helpful to you, and as you strive to move your organizations forward. And I know all of you are doing great things, and I appreciate everything that our profession does to move organizations forward in philanthropy. Any closing comments or questions, Steve, that you have?
No, not really, other than this is pretty much one step short of data modeling. You can take this data and you can look at your A-level donors who have A capacity, and you can compare them to some of your E-level donors who have A capacity. And with just pulling a little bit of extra data, like finding out their year of graduation, their major, if they're what their age is, what their zip code is. A lot of your major donors might live within 250 miles of your organization. Find out if they attend a lot of functions, if they were a member of a club when they were in school, if they're current season ticket holders. Any kind of data points that you can get and export all at the same time, that gives you that much more to compare. And where you find that symmetry along your A-level givers who have A capacity and your E-level givers who have the same flags, you've got great prospects right there to be able to really move the needle and bolster your portfolio, make some truly, significant gifts to your organization and really, really get things moving forward. So
Right.
this is just a step
That's
in that direction, but I think
that's
it's
a
the right
great point,
step.
Steve. And we were, you know, as we did this at the university we were working with this week, that data modeling component is something that's always ongoing. When you see two or three people that you see, you ought to be seeing, you know, and then the more information, as Steve said, you can gather on that individual, the better off you'll be. But I will tell you this, and data modeling is so important, and everything Steve said is right on. But I will tell you this, that you know, don't wait to go out and see that individual till you have all the information, because you're going to get a lot of information when you go see the individual. And we didn't have a lot of information on some of the people that we visited. We had two visits of two great prospects in the San Antonio area last week. We didn't have a lot of information on them, but I'll tell you what, we sure left there with a wealth of things, and also knowing that the entire process that we're doing really does work, because these people do have a loyalty and affinity to their organization. They're glad that we came to see them, and they're welcoming you know, a relationship going forward. And that's always rewarding. And you know, it's really rewarding when you go out and see people like that, and you realize there is an upside both for them, because you know, as it's been written that you know, what we do for individuals by allowing them to give back is not what we do to them, it's something we do for them. And they're so happy that they're finally able to reconnect and be able to make a difference and make an impact with the organizations that they love and have meant a lot to them. And so that's always a great feeling. And again, it's a frustrating feeling when you go out and you're seeing the wrong people. They're wondering why you're coming to see them, and there's no potential there, and you feel like you know, have been. You sometimes wonder on those days, and I know you won't always have a day where you're seeing the right people, but you certainly have a better chance when you're doing the comprehensive prospect rating and looking at the data the way Steve is and I have outlined for you here today.